It's Apple Keynote Day. Gonna start in about 8 minutes or so, and I'm gonna go ahead and watch it, and then I'll come back and share my thoughts and opinions of what Apple announces. Okay, so the event just ended, and the first thing I want to talk about is my favorite part of the whole thing, besides any product announcement, things like that, is the reveal of the Steve Jobs Theater. The opening of the event was a video showing the theater that is beautifully designed. And then after the video, there was a Welcome to the Steve Jobs Theater slate and a voiceover from Steve Jobs talking about his philosophy on design and how we can give back to each other through design. I just got all sorts of emotions as that was playing because I didn't realize how much I missed hearing Steve Jobs' voice and how inspiring Steve Jobs is, and how he truly embodied what he said and believed, and how he pushed others to believe in greater things than what they thought they were capable of. And that coincided with basically the launch of Steve's last product, which is Apple Park. And we haven't seen all of Apple Park yet, but just the Steve Jobs Theater today. And if the Steve Jobs Theater is any indication of what the rest of the facility is going to look like, it is going to be a masterful piece of architecture. And I'm actually really happy that the campus is the last thing that Steve Jobs worked on, because a piece of architecture like that is going to live on and serve as his legacy for way longer than one specific product. He started the smartphone revolution and changed the world with the iPhone, but if the last product he worked on was like the iPhone 5, and that was the one, the iPhone 6 would have been a year later, and then so on and so forth, and eventually nobody would have an iPhone 5. And it wouldn't be something we'd revisit like we can now with Apple Park, and that there are going to be thousands and thousands of people going to this campus to work every single day. You can visit it anytime you want. There's going to be events at this campus, and this park, this living piece of architecture, is going to go on and serve Steve Jobs' legacy more than just one specific product. And so I'm really happy that that's the way that it all worked out. The opening, coupled with the Apple retail kind of announcement and update, was honestly my favorite part of the entire keynote, because just the redesign of the Apple stores to be more about community and to be more about teaching, and specifically the video they showed about today at Apple, to me that just gets back to the root of what actually makes Apple great. Because making a phone, making a computer, making any sort of product is awesome. I want to use those products. But what made Apple great and what continues to make Apple great is not any specific product. It's the philosophy behind it. It is the collaboration and the progressing of the creative culture. I don't know, it just really felt like the Today at Apple segment was getting back to what made me fall in love with Apple over a decade ago. And then the rest of the keynote happened, and did not feel that way the rest of the 2 hours. But we can jump into the actual product announcements, which started with the Apple Watch. Basically, we got the exact same Apple Watch, we just got a cellular radio put into the watch. And so now you'll be able to take calls, listen to music on Apple Music, things like that, without a phone or anything nearby. All you need is your watch connected to a network, which is awesome. But that also means that you're going to have a separate watch plan with AT&T or Sprint or whoever you're with. In order to have those features, you're going to have to add something additional to your phone bill. Personally, I've never worn a watch, so the Apple Watch hasn't really ever enticed me enough to spend the money on it, just because I don't spend money on watches anyway, and there's not a whole lot that the Apple Watch has given me as far as value. At least right now. The only thing I can think of that I would really want one for currently is, now that I live in New York City and I'm boosted boarding around, I have my AirPods connected to my phone telling me where I need to turn, but it is slow to update a lot of times, so it would be nice to have navigation on my wrist so I can glance down and see when the next street that I'm supposed to turn on. So other than that, nothing really makes me excited about an Apple Watch, but one with self-service is the first Apple Watch to actually entice me to consider it. The next thing they announced was a new Apple TV, an Apple TV with 4K capability and HDR. Basically just an Apple TV that can do 4K resolution and have a higher color and resolution range, which is nice for people who have 4K TVs, because as of this point, you are just getting 1080 resolution on your 4K TV. Another big bonus is they said that some movies that you've already purchased are actually going to be upgraded to 4K for free. So that's really nice that you don't have to repurchase a HD movie in 4K if you already own it. Then they announced the iPhone 8, which disrupts the current naming structure because we are now on the iPhone 7. If they were to continue the current naming structure, it would be the iPhone 7S. It should be the iPhone 7S because the iPhone 8 is the iPhone 7S with just a glass back, which allows for wireless charging. So wireless charging is really cool and definitely welcome it into my life, but I don't see why they would go with iPhone 8 just for that upgrade, because the other upgrades in the phone are the same upgrades we get every single year of increased performance in graphics and GPU. So things with the iPhone 8 that I was immediately disappointed with was they still have the camera bump on the back. That is the one thing that drives me crazy about the current design, because we know that if Steve Jobs was still in charge, that camera would be inside the phone. He would challenge the whole team to make it happen. Whatever the cost, it would make it happen. And I just don't think that Tim or anybody else on the team is pushing everybody to believe in the impossible anymore. And whenever the video rolled for the iPhone 8 and I saw that camera bump, I just shook my head, because that was one thing I was really hoping they were going to do, is get that camera in there. It's really not that big a deal, but just for Apple's attention to detail and just the design aesthetics of what Apple is supposed to be, just the camera bump does not fit into that, in my opinion. Then they announced the iPhone 10, which again does not go along with the current naming scheme because they skipped 9 altogether, but it's the 10-year anniversary phone because the first iPhone came out in 2007. Generally speaking, the iPhone 10 is still the same phone, just with a new designed form factor. There's no major upgrade. It does have edge-to-edge display, but that's not revolutionary. That's just Apple catching up to some of the competition. And Face ID would be its flagship feature, I guess, and I'm skeptical of it at the moment because I've never used it, and just thinking about my personal workflow of using my phone, it seems like it would be inconvenient to actually look at my phone to unlock it, because currently while I'm pulling my phone out of my pocket, I can already have my thumb unlocking, so it's unlocked by the time it actually reaches my face. So now I'm pulling out my phone and then it's unlocking. Besides unlocking, the next most common thing I do with Touch ID is Apple Pay. I don't look directly at my phone when I'm Apple Paying. I pull it out of my pocket and I reach over and put it on the machine and then use my thumb. And so the phone camera is looking at the ceiling. It's nowhere near my face. So now I'm going to have to pull up my phone, double click the button to bring up Apple Pay, unlock it with my face, and then put it at the machine. Versus currently I can pull it out of my pocket, go straight to the machine, automatically Apple Pay pops up on my phone, I put my thumb on the sensor and it pays, and I put it back in my pocket. I never actually directly looked at my phone. So that seems like it's going to be something that makes that workflow a little less convenient than what it should. One nice thing about it is they did say that the chances of somebody else being able to use your Touch ID is 1 in 50,000, and your chances of someone else being able to use your Face ID is 1 in a million. So technically, I guess it is a stronger form of protection, but it seems like it's going to be less convenient. But I don't know till I actually try it. They also introduced portrait lighting. With the iPhone 7 Plus, they introduced portrait mode, which allows for the cameras to intelligently detect the background from the foreground and digitally blur out the background to allow you to have DSLR style photos with a phone. So what they announced at this keynote was portrait lighting, which is actually pretty cool if it works. It basically analyzes the scene and your face and allows you to choose a custom lighting setup for that picture. And so it will take the contours of your face and apply certain lighting techniques to the photo, and for it to appear as though you took the photo in a certain studio lighting setup. And I'm sure that some photographers are groaning at that because it actually takes a lot of skill to learn how to set up a studio to light a portrait that way. But now technology is taking over that skill. But that's been happening forever. New technology allows us to do things that took a lot of time and skill before, and now we can do that easier, and it gives access to more people. Some people see that as a threat. It allows more people to take better photos, but it doesn't replace you. You have your skills and your creative eye, and just because a soccer mom can take a photo that appears to have portrait lighting doesn't mean it's a threat to your job. I'm actually pretty excited to see where that technology goes, because if Apple is starting to use it on a phone with the processing power of a phone and the cameras on a phone, just imagine what we can do later if that technology is implemented in a wider way. If we'll be able to do that with professional equipment and manipulate the lighting afterwards, just the creative possibilities of that is enormous. And for it to be able to start on a phone is promising that there's going to be great things ahead for intelligent lighting. And technology like this being in the hands of people who may not currently have the skills to take really great photos, it allows them to take better photos than what they were. It allows them to take decent photos now. That is a plus in my book, because now I get to look at less ugly photos. And the less ugly photos that are in my feed and in my life, the better. So that's a wrap of everything that was announced and my opinions, my thoughts on each. If you want to, leave me a comment. Let me know what you think about each of the products. Also, the Steve Jobs Theater. You can also leave a comment letting me know how much you think I'm an Apple fanboy. And I'll see you in my next video on Friday.